I'm lucky. I live in a city like Mumbai where I get 24 hours electric supply. I earn enough so that when I see my electricity bill, I don't get pinched too much. But the same is not true for a majority of our fellow Indians. Did you know that at 290 million, India has the highest number of people without an electricity connection? And even those who are connected get roughly 10 to 18 hours of a supply every day. But it's really hard for that person who may be earning just rupees 5,000 per month. Imagine this, 10 to 20% of his income is going towards electricity. Hence the Ask How question. Let's start with the rate of electrification in rural India. Between 2001 and 2010, we moved from 43% to 66% electrification. Now at this rate, we would have 100% electrification only in 2023. Let's talk about the cost of no electricity. Now villagers are opting to pay rupees 150 to 200 rupees for off-grid power suppliers like solar power providers. Now that means they're paying for power at the rate of 8 rupees to 12 rupees per unit. Now what's interesting is that's twice what we are paying in the cities. Now why would they pay so much? Research shows that they value power because they like the opportunity to be able to work and study in the evening. And this leads us to the Ask How question. How do we connect all of India faster? So as I said, even those who are connected don't necessarily have a 24-hour power supply. Why? One of the major reasons is fuel. Nearly 70% of India's supply is coal-based. This is the current reality. In the future, renewables like solar power may take over, but for an Indian child that needs to study tonight, coal-based power is essential. However, coal power plants do not have adequate amounts of fuel. Right now, they are generating roughly 60 to 70% of their rated capacity. And did you know that we have the third highest reserves of coal in the world and we still import coal? And here's what's more interesting. This coal that we import is more expensive, and this leads to higher electricity prices. So this brings us to our next Ask How question. How do we exploit our coal reserves so that we produce a lot more low-cost electricity? Now we have added a lot of capacity in the last 10 years, but it is still short of our requirements. Furthermore, a large part of our existing capacity is old and would need to be replaced. The new capacity, however, would be costlier. And I want to talk to you about another issue in power. It's the issue of natural monopoly. Now what do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, an industry which doesn't have a natural monopoly, like the mobile phone handset industry. I have several options to choose from, but that's not true in the case of the power industry. Today, in most parts of India, if I'm unhappy with the quality of service or the prices, I cannot change my supplier. So I guess we can agree that a natural monopoly needs to be regulated so that it doesn't overcharge its customers and that it remains efficient. And this leads us to the next Ask How questions. How do we regulate our power providers? The three main components of power are fuel, generation costs, and transmission and distribution losses. We have seen that the first two, fuel costs and new capacity costs, are set to rise. Let's now look at the transmission costs. Transmission losses are engineering losses and losses due to theft of power. As rural connectivity increases, the engineering losses will increase as power has to be transmitted over longer distances. Reduction in theft is possible with stricter monitoring and punitive measures against offenders. So now, if you want to implement power for all, note that the three major cost components, fuel, generation costs, transmission costs, they will go up. So the Ask How question is, how do we keep tariffs low? Let's examine tariffs. Agricultural power is almost free. Domestic power is below cost for most. It is only industry that pays 30% above cost. Now, if industry pays more, then it follows that the cost of goods will rise, or industry will then move to diesel gensets, which means that the distribution companies will be poorer. When charges to consumers are cut, the government has to pay subsidies to the power companies. And when subsidies are unpaid, the power company then cannot invest in wires, towers, and meters. So folks, in this particular capsule, we've raised more questions than answers. And that's simply because for a question like how do we keep fuel prices lower, there is no simple answer. However, the questions we've raised and the information we've presented to you will help you decide if your candidate is making a realistic promise to you. And we hope it helps.